Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. We've got hearings here, Committee of Adjustment, City of Toronto. It's in accordance with Sections 45 and 53 of the Planning Act, 1990, as amended, and this meeting of the Committee of Adjustment is called to order. To introduce the panel members, I am the chair. My name is Larry Swartz. On my left, Mr. Marziari. On my far left, on my near left, Mr. Bartolo. Panel members. On my far right, Ms. Sankar. On my near right, Mr. Kubu. The Committee of Adjustment considers applications for variances from the provisions of the zoning that applies to the property. It considers permission to extend or alter lawful non-conforming uses, and it provides consents to sever property to create new lots. We acknowledge the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. It is now the home of many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 of the Mississaugas of the Credit. The Committee of Adjustment public hearings are now conducted in a hybrid in-person and virtual format. Some applicants and participants will make their submissions in person. Others will participate virtually by electronic means through WebEx, an online digital platform. The meetings are also streamed on the Toronto City Planning YouTube channel, and anyone wishing to view the hearing may watch on YouTube. Those who want to participate virtually and have registered in advance will be connecting with their computer, tablet, smartphone, or telephone, and they have the option of participating via video or audio only. All virtual participants will automatically be muted on entry. When your item is called, you will be unmuted by the moderator, one person at a time. We ask that you also mute your devices until you are called on to speak. Those participating by video appearance will be temporarily upgraded to panelist when your item is being held. During this time, your camera will be enabled. You will only be visible during your 5-minute allotted speaking time. At all other times, your video will be disabled and you will be reinstated as an attendee. For both in-person and virtual participants, Committee of Adjustment staff will share presentations submitted in accordance with the written submissions deadline. Those participating through WebEx are not allowed to use share screen or any other panelist controls during a video appearance. The host will remove you from the panelist role if you fail to respect this instruction. People attending in person today who want to receive a copy of the decision of the committee on the application must fill out a decision request card, and those participating virtually need to submit a written request for the decision by email. Please ensure that you include your name, address, email address, because the Committee of Adjustment and TLAB, which is a Toronto local appeal body, will be sending notifications and appeal updates by email. If you do not agree with the decision of the committee, you may be able to appeal the decision to the TLAB, or in some limited circumstances to the OLT, which is the Ontario Land Tribunal. However, the provincial government amended the Planning Act and generally removed the rights of third parties to appeal Committee of Adjustment decisions. Only the applicant, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, specified persons, and public bodies, as those terms are defined in the Planning Act, are permitted to appeal decisions of the Committee of Adjustment. Appeal instructions are set out at the bottom of the decision of the committee. I will call each item in the order listed on the agenda. When an application is uncontested, the agent or applicant may proceed with their presentation if desired. However, when the committee does not require a presentation, applicants are to advise the chair should they wish to speak to the committee. The committee may ask questions or take the matter into committee for a decision. Each speaker, including the applicant agent, will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to address the committee. I will comment when you are reaching 5 minutes. Any presentation or other materials you wish to submit to the committee must have been emailed in advance of the hearing. Staff and committee members cannot accept materials at the hearing. When addressing the committee, please clearly state your name and address. Please remember to confine your remarks to the matters outlined in the application. The applicant or agent will proceed first and will make a presentation to the committee on the application. Please note that the committee may not entertain revisions to proposals at the hearing today. Committee may decide to defer the application if substantially revised to ensure the revised application is accurate and that all those entitled to notice of the application are informed of the changes. Then, individuals either in support or opposed to the application will be invited to speak. Generally, we call first on speakers in the hearing room and then those participating through WebEx. Committee members may ask questions of each speaker after they have finished their presentation. When all speakers are finished, the applicant agent has the opportunity to rebut only those issues that were raised by the speakers. That will mark the end of the discussion. The application will then be taken into committee for a decision. All right, so are there any declarations of interest of panel or staff for any items? Yes, Mr. Marzier.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I have a conflict with item 12. That is the first item on 2 p.m. agenda.
All right, so item 12, Mr. Marzier has declared a conflict.
Mr. Chair, can I just have the reason, please?
So I know the applicant slash architect.
Okay, thank you. No further declarations of interest. Are there any, I think we've already done this, there are no deferral requests at all today.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there are no deferrals that we know of right now.
Okay, and we already dealt with the files to be closed and there aren't any of those either. So we are on to the next hearing. And the next hearing is the first one of the afternoon, which according to my, let me just find it. Just bear with me a moment as I pull it up. So this is item number 12, and it is 200 St. Leonard's Avenue. This is to construct a new 2-story detached dwelling, rear deck, and basement walkout. This file was deferred May 23rd, 2024 to address neighbors' concerns. I have a number of documents on file, and they include an arborist report and 3 forestry reports and a letter of objection. There are 10 variances requested here. They deal with wall height, yard setbacks, heights of the building, etc. All right. For item number 12, we have some people presenting. They include agents and neighbors. So let's bring the agent. Got 2 agents here, so I presume there will only be one, or they will be sharing their time. And are they available?
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Pfeffer. I am going to be speaking as the agent here today. My address is 54 Belsize Drive in Toronto.
Okay, and is there somebody else as an agent? You're the only one. Are you sharing time with another?
Yep, I'm the only one.
Okay. Are you making any amendments to your application?
Yes. We're happy to accept the conditions that staff suggested, which are that we be tied both to the site plan for length and the side elevations of the house. I have also told the committee via correspondence that we intend to strike variance number 10, the variance for the front yard landscaping, which I think got in there by accident, and we certainly don't need it. It was very small, but variance number 10 we do not want. And because of our correspondence with the neighbor, we're going to ask that the committee impose a condition that no air conditioning, pool, or other noise-generating equipment will be located in the westerly side yard within 25 meters of the front property line.
Okay.
And that condition I spelled out in correspondence to the committee as well.
Okay. I don't know if I saw it, but so no air conditioning or what? Air conditioning.
No air conditioning, pool, or other noise-generating equipment will be located in the westerly side yard within 25 meters of the front property line.
And 25 meters of, okay. All right, we'll deal with this when we come to it, then. But so you said something else. You're agreeing to the conditions of the site plan required by the city, right? Is that part of your?
Yeah, both of the conditions. Yeah.
Okay. And
laid
were
out by
any of
staff.
and you're taking out number 10, and are you reducing or changing any of the 1 to 9?
No, we are not.
Okay. All right. And you've heard my colleague talk about the private agreement, whether we can impose certain terms is something we'll have to assess, but let's just proceed. You'll have 5 minutes starting now.
Okay, if you could pull up the visual book of presentation material, I'd appreciate it. And I want to thank the committee for deferring this at the past hearing a couple of months ago, so we could, in fact, make sure that we had appropriate correspondence with the neighbors here. And we have done, and that resulted in an undertaking between the owner of this property, our client, and the neighbor to the west who appeared to object at the last hearing. And part of that resolution was basically to have that condition of having no air conditioning on the westerly side yard. The other is a private undertaking for matters which I don't think the committee can actually impose as a condition, but the owner has made an undertaking in writing to the neighboring owner for those things. So as you may recall from the prior hearing, this is the front elevation of the house. And what we tried very hard to do is make sure that this house presents as a 2-story house in this neighborhood, which was originally supposed to be 2-story houses. I'm sure you see a lot of variances in this neighborhood for 3-story houses. Some houses even present as 4 stories, but we worked with the topography to tuck the garage into the topography and make a real 2-story house, which presents as such to the street. We're asking for a very small height variance, but you can't actually see from the street the portion of the roof that generates that height variance. Now, if you go to the next plan, see the site plan, the as of right envelope of a 19-meter house is shown in kind of fuchsia on this site plan. And you can see we're actually very little beyond this in depth. We've got planning support for the depth we're asking for, and we worked very hard with planning on this to make sure that they were supporting what we had proposed. You can see this on the site plan if you scroll down. You can also see that we're in line with the house to the east, and at the west, we're beside the detached garage, which is a feature of that lot to the west. That lot to the west, you may recall, is a bungalow, which faces this side lot line. But that bungalow is in actually a pretty good condition compared to what could be built as of right. They're a full 17.5 feet from the wall we're proposing, and that side yard has nothing going on in it. No equipment, no walkway, no trash storage, nothing. It's all landscaped, and we've undertaken to that owner to plant a pretty substantial hedge along that side lot line. We have one window on that lot line, and we staked it out on site with the neighboring owner there, and it doesn't face his entry or any of his other major windows. So there really isn't any impact there. If you go a couple of pages down from the site plan, You'll see these rear yard conditions. This lot has a lot of topography to it. A couple of pages further down, you can see we do have a little bit of a terrace at the ground floor at the rear. If you could scroll down 2 pages, please. You do have a bit of a terrace at the ground floor of the rear, the natural thing to extend the living space of the house. 1 more page. At the ground floor level, very common in this neighborhood to have that rear yard ground floor terrace. And ours doesn't really create any overlook because of the garage to one side, the distance to the next side. 2 more pages down on page 6, you can see an aerial photograph of this entire street. And you can see we're in keeping with the patterns of open space on this block in that we're aligned basically in the front and in the back with the other houses that you see along the street. And I think that's why we have staff on side saying that what we're looking for in terms of the length variance is absolutely appropriate. You go to the next page, and then the page after that, you'll see some of the houses on the street that present as 3 or 4 stories. So our presentation to the street, very much in keeping, just as our length is very much in keeping with the established character of this neighborhood. And then finally, if you go just 1 more page down, speaking to the length again, I showed you on the site plan that kind of fuchsia outline of an as-of-right envelope on the block. There's that same as-of-right envelope in fuchsia here. You can see that we're beyond it a little bit, but not actually very much for the depth of the building. You can see we line up essentially with the house to the east, and you can see our terrace there tucked away on the westerly side lot line. And that terrace is actually standing on that terrace at eye level. You're actually below the eave of that detached garage of the house to the east. So that's my presentation. Thank you very much. Happy to take questions.
All right, thank you. Panel members, questions of the applicant's agent? Seeing, hearing none, we have a resident, a neighbor who wishes to speak. Do we have that person available on the,
Through the chair, we weren't able to contact the neighbor.
okay, so we have no further participants, and we have no questions for the applicant. So we will now go into committee, and I ask committee to provide some comments or motions, and I noticed Ms. Sankar, please go ahead.
Yes, sure. Through you, Mr. Chair. I'm ready for a motion if my colleagues have no further questions. I think that this application has been thought through. I do believe that in it sort of meeting the staff report, it's very sensitive type of development, and I'll put forward a motion to approve this application. I think it does meet the 4 tests, and I'll make it subject to the July 11th staff report in that, and I'll pull it up here just to make sure I'm reading the right one, because there are 2 that's listed on the file, but this is July 11th, and that is that, first of all, I'll state that the variance number 10 is eliminated at the applicant's request, and subject to staff recommendations that the side exterior main wall height be developed substantially in accordance with the east and west elevation drawings, and the building length be developed substantially in accordance with the site plan drawing attached. I also wanted to make one quick comment about, the no equipment and air conditioning, etc. on one side of the building. I think you had said west side. I don't want to put that in there because I don't think that that is the purview of the committee. However, I want to assure you that this is being recorded and that any private agreements that you have with each other should inevitably be respected, because that's the intention of this. So with that, I'm just going to leave my motion as an approval with staff recommendations as well as with number 10 being eliminated and with forestry condition number 2. Thank you.
All right, so we've heard the motion. Do we have a seconder, Mr. Botolo? Unless there's any comment on the motion, let's put it to a vote. All those in favor, it is unanimous for everyone who's here. Congratulations, the application is approved. And we will move to the next one, which is item 14.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. So item 13. So item 13 is 37 Brightwood Street. There are 4 variances. This is to construct a new detached dwelling with a second unit in the basement. This application was deferred at the hearing June 20, 2024. We have before us a number of documents, including an arborist report, a staff report, and the staff report has advises of some revisions, which we'll get to. The variances deal with front yard setbacks, side yard setbacks, lot coverage. All right, we only have a applicant agent to present, just one person. Just if you could state your name, state your address, tell us what amendments you're making, and then just pause after you've done that.
Sure. My name is John Ramirez. My address is 371 Strawberry Crescent, Waterloo, Ontario. And the changes we've made from our June 20th meeting was, which we spoke about at the meeting, was the side yard setback at the rear side of the house. We reduced it from 1.43 to 1.29. It is just one corner of the rear. But it is the side yard setback that we're requesting this revision. I could explain further the presentation that we had last month, but I'll leave that up to you.
Okay, so so I just want to be clear on this, like the changes you're making, like so the applicant informed the staff that number 1 setback is going from 7.36 to 7.6. Are you doing that one for number 1?
Yes, that will remain at 7.60.
Got it. And for number 3, it's going from 1.43 meters to 1.8 meters, correct?
No, so
What are we doing?
this was the discussion we had, but so the side of the house has 3 different setbacks. There's one pinched corner at the back, which is at 1.29, and that's why we had to defer it, because that was the variance change we were making for this hearing today.
So what is that at now? What are you keeping it at 1.29 or are you changing it to something else?
Yes, it's at 1.29. The planner, we spoke about it. It's if I can show you the diagram, you'll see that it's only at one corner of the house.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, through you, I think he was noting the changes from the last time he appeared before committee to this time. So if he is making changes, he should be referencing the current public notice. But I believe what he started was to highlight what he changed from the first time he came prior to the deferral.
Okay. It's like I'm.
Yes, that's correct.
I think I'm looking at. Well, maybe we need to hear from him. Like, I mean, there's nobody in opposition, but it's not clear to me what the changes were and whether it's all in accordance with the staff report. Do we want to hear from him, or do you want me to question him? Do you want me to question him, or do you want me to just let him do his presentation? Okay, so why don't you go ahead? We may not need a full-blown presentation, but probably given the changes that are being made, you can do your presentation and, take up to your 5 minutes to explain what's going on here, please.
Sure, not a problem. So if we can just go to my presentation from the one I submitted for this meeting or even last meeting, because it's the same. So this one is, what date is this one? This is the June 20th. So I submitted some other material that was for this hearing, and if it was at the end of June. I don't know if you guys have that. I submitted it with the revised drawings. Okay, well, I'll explain it here, but we can go ahead. So we'll move to the next slide. So the variances here are, yeah, these are the 4 variances that are applying for this hearing. So it's front yard setbacks, two side yard setbacks, and lot coverage. Can we go to the next slide? So the reason for these variances is due to the lot size and the lot shape. You can see here that it's in an irregular shape. There's an angled property line that's creating a lot of issues with our side yard setbacks. So this is the reason why we're requesting these variances. Can we go to the next slide? So here where you can see how the front of the house is very difficult to place the house perpendicular to the property line. You can see here at the more to where the driveway is our tightest site, front yard setback at 7.6 meters. And when you get to the other side where the front porch is, it gets further, this front yard setback goes out over 10 meters. So that red portion there is what we're really encroaching in on what's the required front yard setback. Can we go to the next slide? So on the side of the garage, you can see there in the red is what we're encroaching. Again, we're proposing 1.22 meters, where the front yard, the side yard setback is 1.8. The rest of the house complies. It's just that side where the garage is where we don't comply with, and we're requesting a 1.22 meter encroachment. Oh, sorry, setback. Can we go to the next slide? The next slide, please. Oh, can we go to the next slide? Oh, so we can just see the image. So here, this is the change that we had to make. So originally our variance said 1.43 meters. We were requesting a 1.29. So that red portion is what's causing the issue. And so as you can see, because of the property line, it's angled, it's creating this issue of a side yard setback. One of the issues I had with when placing this house was the further I pushed the house back, the more side yard setback I was having. So we came up with the planning staff, we came up with this solution of having this side yard setback of 1.29, but only at the back, as you can see. At the front, at the front where the front porch is, you'll see that we comply with a minimum of 1.8 meters. Can we go to the next slide? The next slide. And then the lot coverage, you can see because of the lot size and the irregular shape of the lot, which is pretty unique in this area, you'll see that, the house is 32.82%. We have a small front porch. The rear porch is not covered. It's just a deck. And you can see why we're requesting a lot coverage variance. Next slide. And that's the end of my presentation. I know the planner, staff submitted a letter stating that the approval should be based on the site plan that was provided on our original submission, which was, I believe, June 22nd. There was a minor change, that didn't change the variances. It was just a matter of removing the walkout stairs, on the side of the house that the homeowner did not want anymore.
There's,
And we're hoping
you're
that the
almost out of
commission
time,
approves
so
this.
if you can wrap it up, please.
Yeah, we're done.
Oh,
The
perfect.
presentation is done.
So committee members, do we have question of the applicant? Yes, Mr. Bartolo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you, just for the applicant. So what you're saying is these drawings dated June 24th, they're not accurate, so you don't want anything tied to them, is that correct?
They are not the ones we would like to go to building permit with, because the walkout steps have been removed and the front porch, which still complies with the variance, still complies with the zoning bylaw, has been slightly adjusted.
Okay, so we're looking at the July 12th is the correct.
12.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Yes, that's correct.
Do the panel members feel they have what they need to go into committee, understand which application and amendments they're dealing with? Is there anybody that doesn't and would like to ask a question?
Mr. Chair, I don't understand. I don't really clearly get the difference between the changes and what was done previously.
Okay, so why don't you, okay, so Mr. Applicant's agent, we've got a question from Mr. Kubu. If you could please try to clarify for him, maybe he can repeat the question and you can go through it carefully so he
Yes, Mr.
understands.
Again, I would just like you to make a little bit clearer for me what you've changed since the last application in early June.
Sure. Can we pull up the early June site plan? Okay, so you see the walkout steps that are on the side of the garage? Those steps going down to the basement have been removed. At the back there, you'll see it where it says new two-story family, single family dwelling. So those steps right on that side of the house has been removed. I don't know if you're pointing at it. I don't think you're pointing at it, but those steps have been removed. Yeah, those right there. Yeah, those steps have been removed. And then the front porch, you'll see at the side, right there where your mouse is. That's side yard setback is at 2.09 meters. We just went to 1.8 meters, which is what we're allowed to build up to. And those were the two changes we made.
I'm okay, Mr.
Okay, Mr. Kubu is okay. Any further questions from panel members? All right, so we're now going to go into committee, and we are in committee. And I look to our members for direction. All right, so
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm ready to make a motion on this.
Mr. Marziari, please go ahead.
I think it's the application is supportable. I don't see any issue. I don't have any concern. I think it meets the four tests of the Planning Act. So I'd like to make a motion to approve, subject to planning staff recommendation, that is the side yard setback to be developed in accordance with the site plan drawing. Dated July 12th, 2024.
Okay, so did staff hear that? Do they understand?
Yeah, it's the revised plan received July 12th in your package.
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. And so the staff recommended attaching the condition that the front yard, side yard setbacks be developed in substantially in accordance with the revised site plan drawing. So that's effectively what you're saying. Got it. Do we have a seconder, Mr. Bartolo? Go to a vote. Those in favor, it's unanimous. Congratulations to the applicant. And we are now on to the next application, which is 14. And 14 is 60 GLENFOREST Road. That is to construct a new detached dwelling. This file was deferred on June 6, 2024, to allow the applicant to confirm the variances required. We have several documents, including 3 forestry reports, 2 letters of support, 2 staff reports. We've had, looks like 6 variances, and it looks like some of them have been withdrawn, I think. We'll find out. They deal with front yard setbacks, rear deck height, and floor space. And there's a staff report that talks about the maximum floor index and approval conditions. So let's go to the applicant's agent, which I think we have 2 people, but they're from the same firm, so probably only one is here.
Hi there. I'm not sure if you can hear me. Good afternoon. I'm Drew Laszlo, agent for the owner. My address is 193 Rowe Avenue.
Thank you. And are we talking about any changes to the application here that we need to know about before you proceed with your presentation? What are
None.
No changes?
No changes. Correct.
Okay. So let me just, before you get going, let me turn to my panel members. What's the interest of panel members? Do you want to hear a full presentation, a partial presentation, or nothing much? I see a lot of shaking heads, which to me means, Mr. Applicant's agent, you don't need to do a lot of presenting. It's your call. I'll hand it over to you. You've got up to 5 minutes, but you might not need much or any of it. Go ahead.
I did, in a nutshell, this is the exact same application. The house is identical to the one that was originally brought forth in front of Committee of Adjustment a couple of months ago. There were 3 variances on there originally, which were not required. So those were removed. And then the zoning examiner forgot 2 other variances, which have been added. But the house is the same as it originally was, just a different list of variances.
So you're talking about
Thank you.
The front yard setback, floor space, and the building depth. Those are still part of this application. The other ones aren't. Is that right?
Correct. Yes, the building depth was a variance that was forgotten the first time around, added this second time around, but it was always there. It was just left off originally. It should have been on the original zoning notice. But again, the house is exactly the same as it was 2 months ago when it was before the committee.
Okay. So you don't have to do really a lot of work. I think the panel members understand it. You don't have to do a lot of work in terms of presenting to us. They don't really need to hear from you. What do you want to do?
I won't take that personally, but no.
Well, one of my panel members, before we ask you what you want to do, one of my panel members has just sort of indicated, what about the staff report? Have you complied with all the recommendations in the staff report? The condition.
Yes, and again,
you're okay with the condition the staff report made that the approval made subject to conditions outlined in the recommendations of their report, which I think is just dealing with the maximum floor space. But are you okay with the staff conditions?
Yes, very okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So you don't have to do a lot. We don't really need to hear from you. Do you want to say anything more, or can we go into committee?
Oh, well, please take it into committee. Thanks again.
Okay, thank you. We are now in committee, and I see one of my colleagues is motioning to make a motion. Is that
Yeah.
Ms. Sankar, you want to make?
Yeah, I'm ready for a motion if my colleagues don't have anything further to add. And I think that this was a really straightforward application. I think it was, to me, I think, I'm not sure if I was part of it, but it looks very familiar to me as if I was part of the previous version to come forward. So I do believe that it looks good, and since you have no issues with the staff report, I'm going to put forward a motion to approve this application, as I do believe it meets the 4 tests. I'm going to make it subject to a forestry condition number 2, and I'm going to make it subject to the July 11th staff report, in that the staff recommends that the maximum floor space index, excluding the basement, shall be 0.71. And that's my motion. Thank you.
Okay, so we got a motion, and I look, Mr. Kaboo is seconding it. And all those in favor, please raise. It looks like it's unanimous. Congratulations to the applicant, and we will move to the next application.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The next application is 15. It's 1837-1845 Bayview Avenue. This is a proposal to increase the maximum gross floor area and height of buildings. Have a number of documents. They include an arborist report, several letters of objection, looks like about 8. We've got a staff report, talks about building height and size. Only got a couple of variances proposed, gross floor area and height of the building. So we have several people here, it looks like, but most of them are the applicant, and we have one neighbor. Do we have, is it one neighbor or maybe many neighbors? We've got a bunch of neighbors right on the next page. Okay, we've got many neighbors, and we have a number of co-agents. All right, let's hear from the co-agent, please.
Mr. Chair, my name is Michael Goldberg.
Okay.
Can you hear
Michael
me?
Goldberg, yes. And your address?
Yes, I'm a principal of Goldberg Group, 2098 Avenue Road in Toronto, M5M4A8. And initially, Mr. Chair, I'm going to assume you would like to have a presentation, and if the presentation could be put onto the screen, that would be helpful. The applicant's presentation.
So the question I have before you start this is, have you made any changes to your application?
Not since the reduction from 27 to 25 stories. This remains a proposal for 25 stories.
Okay, 25 stories. All right.
Okay.
Okay, so why don't you go ahead with your 5 minutes, please?
Okay, thank you very much. Just to give you an introduction, Mr. Mario Antelucci, I think, is in the audience. Mr. Mark, and he is with the applicant. He is an executive with the applicant. Mark Flowers is also in the audience. He is the solicitor for the applicant. And Mr. Tim Arnott is the traffic consultant, and he is online apparently. And they would only need to speak, Mr. Chair, in the event of a reply that I'm unable to answer. In terms of background, what I could say is this was an application. What you see on the screen is where the application is. there's an approval. The green means approval for a 29-story building right across the street, and a 31. It says 31 and 33. I'm just going to call it a 31-story building without complicating matters. So there's an approval for 2 buildings right across the street. At the time of our approval, in October and November of 23, those proposals remained proposals. Staff had remained opposed to those proposals, and City Council had remained opposed to those proposals. So you did not have an approved context immediately across the street for tall buildings. They have since been approved in February and in March of 2024. After our approvals, staff recommended to City Council that they support settlements at 29 stories for the corner building, at 31 stories for the building to the south, and Council approved or endorsed those settlements. So at this point in time, they were approved subsequent to our approval, and what that does as a planner, I could say that dramatically changes the context of the immediate surrounding area. Even at the proposed height of 25 stories, both these buildings immediately across the street will remain taller. If you could turn to page 3 of the presentation, you will see what I'm talking about. There you go. It's those 2 green properties immediately across the street. The motivation for this application, members of committee, is that there is an awfully bad economy in terms of interest rates, in terms of construction costs, and this will help create a more viable project. And without a viable project, there is no construction of housing, and that is a planning impact. The other motivation is there is a dramatically changed context that is now approved. So what is this application doing? You'll see in the zoning bylaw, stories is not contained in the zoning bylaw, only measured height. And what you have here is measured height for an increase of 5.15 meters, not for 3 more stories. And the reason there is only 5.15 meters for 3 stories is because the mechanical penthouse has been dramatically reduced by 4 meters in height, and from 692 square meters to 288 square meters in terms of area or coverage. The reason why the mechanical penthouse has been reduced dramatically like this is because the building is now going to geothermal. And as a result of geothermal, there is not a need for the additional mechanical penthouse and the height of the mechanical penthouse. This project would add 33 new housing units, which are clearly needed housing units. The application is supported by what I'm going to call a positive staff report that has no objection to the approval. With this application, we provided updated servicing, wind, traffic, and shadow studies, and the incremental difference of the 33 additional housing, the PFA, or the 5.15 meter of height shows that there is no adverse impacts arising. There was some comments about the bad faith nature of this proposal in view of there being minutes of settlement with the ratepayer group who were parties to the OMB hearing. And I'm rather surprised to hear that. I'm just going to say, I'm surprised to hear it from their lawyer in their letter, and I'm surprised to hear it from people who were on that committee, because paragraph 24 of the minutes of settlement, as with the ratepayer group and the development, says these minutes shall be without prejudice to the rights of the parties in relation to any future applications that may be.
Okay, so your time is up. Your time is up.
Okay, so all I'm saying is the incremental distances are very, very small, and all other matters
Thank
of
you.
this
So
application
let's just
remain
go
the same.
to the
Thank you.
panel members and see if they have questions. Got any questions, panel members of the applicant? Yes, Mr. Bartolo.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, just for clarity's sake, because of the way that the variances are laid out, the total height request I had was an increase of 5.15 meters. I just wanted to confirm that.
That is confirmed, sir.
Thank you.
All right. More questions, panel members? I see no more questions. There's going to be some submissions from the residents. You'll have a chance to rebut that, Mr. Applicant Agent. So let's go to the neighbors. Do we have a neighbor? Do we have any neighbors here? Okay, we have neighbors here. Well, somebody come to the podium and state your name. Yep, make sure the microphone's on, put it as close to your mouth as possible so we can hear you well, and state your name and your address.
My name is Bill Swift, and I live at 40 GLENVIEW Avenue, 1 Street West of the intersection of
Okay, just let me check your.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I cannot hear this person.
We got Bill Swift, is that right? Bill Swift at 40
It's okay, can you hear me now?
GLENVIEW Avenue?
Bill Swift, 40 GLENVIEW Avenue, which
Okay.
is 1 street west of Bayview, near
That's
this
fine.
property.
Well, so you're going to have 5 minutes. I just want to address, because we've got a number of neighbors here, and I just want to give some direction to the neighbors. I don't know how coordinated you are amongst yourselves, but it's best if you try to, you're each going to get up to 5 minutes. You don't need the full 5 minutes. Now you're the first speaker, Mr. Swift, so that this doesn't apply to you, but it will apply to the subsequent speakers, because we would like you to try not to repeat what a previous speaker has said. You can do that, but it's going to take away from your presentation. It's going to take away from your time. It's going to take away from our ability to actually make this decision well, because you're going to get potentially tuned out by our otherwise attentive panel members if they hear the same thing 10 times. So try to be as unique. If you say that you support, you agree with others, you can go through that quickly and focus in on the things that are unique about your presentation so you have the most impact and it's valuable to the panel. Okay, so all I'm saying is try to be unique in your presentation to the extent possible. That's just an introduction. You're all going to have your chance, and I'll turn it over to the person at the podium. You'll have 5 minutes now. Go ahead.
Okay. As I said, my wife and I live 1 street west of the intersection of Bayview and Broadway, which is where this is being constructed. We will literally live in the shadow of this building, plus 3 other towers that are planned all within 100 meters of the same corner as was referenced. We understand and accept the need for increased housing in Toronto, particularly in conjunction with housing shortages and the proximity to the LRT. We do take offense, though, at what we see as a tactic that's being employed by the developer to, once having agreed to a deal, to now modify a deal. We believe there will be material and consequential impacts to the detriment of existing and proposed residents of adding further population massing, which all these buildings are doing, and any further for this is the same. Going back a year or so ago, this developer met with the City of Toronto and a Ratepayers Association, BBGPI, and entered into mediation at a mutually acceptable agreement of 22 stories. The deal was done. Residents were disappointed at the approval of a building at this height, towering immediately beside our 1- and 2-story residential homes. It does create a stark picture for contrast. After approval, residents hoped that 1837 would have a precedent and reduce the size of the other 3 across the street. The decision for 22 stories was explained to us that the east side of Bayview is zoned residential with a lower height ceiling, as versus the west side of the street, which is residential industrial. Regardless, the deal for 1837 was accepted. Now we are here for what was characterized as a minor exception to increase the height further. The community impact of this concentrated height rise at Bayview and Broadway will be very significant both during and after construction. The population of our Broadway community will triple. Every floor added will worsen the situation. There are severe restrictions on residents and visitor parking within these buildings, good ecologically, but not practical given the location. Save 2 grocery stores, there are no other meaningful services and amenities within walking distance. There are no spaces in our schools for children of residents. They will have to be shipped out. Unlike Yonge Street, there are no local plazas, theaters, hard good outlets, and diminishing medical services for residents to visit. We can only conclude a constant stream of delivery trucks will result. There are not typical driveways for these buildings, and the entrances will be off side streets to be able to drop people off. There's no way of getting off the side street. As we have experienced recent sidewalk and repair work happening on Bayview, the traffic has significantly intensified. With every added floor and backup, and with every added floor, the backup spills into our local neighborhood. The construction itself will materially plug up Bayview and Broadway. In the circumstances, there will be an overflow of delivery, resident, and visitor cars, which will have no places to park except on our streets. These cars will have to park on our side streets. Bayview Avenue, after the DVP, is a major thoroughfare point between the 401 and the Bayview extension to downtown. Plugging it up is a consequence for our city. We emphasize that any incremental units and occupants will only exacerbate existing congestion problems further. The population for enlarging 1837 is characterized as minor. With 3 floors and on an existing template, just 40 or more units, we had 41 units, and a couple of hundred people. That doesn't sound like a big deal. Our response is a deal is a deal. Anything to enlarge the intense population congestion at Bayview and Broadway adds to an already evident problem. It's non-conforming, given the zoning, and most importantly, it's not a minor adjustment. Reflecting on this issue, if I approached this panel and I suggested that I wanted to add a floor to my home, on the existing template, what would you say? Or if I just wanted to make...
You got 10 seconds, please.
Okay. I'm saying that to say that it's a vertical addition on a template is not appropriate, because if we asked for the same thing, it would be declined.
Okay, thank you. So that's your time. But there might be a question. Do we have one? Panel members? All right. So thank you, sir. We have a further resident in attendance. Hi there. So if you could please state your name.
Good afternoon, committee. My name is Jeff Cattell. I'm co-president of the Leaside Residents Association. I'm also a writer for Leaside Life.
Okay, but your
and
address?
My address is 1601 Bayview Avenue. That's the association.
Okay.
Well, first of all, I would like to point out that there were 72 letters of opposition.
Why don't we now give you your 5 minutes, and then you can correct me on anything. So we'll have your time. You're gonna have 5 minutes. It's gonna start now. Okay, and then go ahead.
Sure.
Thank you.
I'd like to point out that we have 70, you're in receipt. I'm sure you've read them. There were 72 letters of opposition, and none in support. None of them are form letters. None of them are a petition. You have really hit a chord in this community of Leaside. and across the road in Broadway. The strong opposition of the Leaside Residents Association is based on the process that it's gone through, the applicant's bad faith bargaining, and the abuse of the Committee of Adjustment process. Your agenda this afternoon and this morning dealt with single lots, you know, a little bit of setback here, a little bit of height, a little bit of FSI. This is completely different. And secondly, the substance, the failure of the application to meet the established planning basis for variances to be considered as minor variances. Quickly go through the chronology. An application was made in 2021, appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal, a mediated settlement, and the settlement involved a residents group called BBPI, and the deal was approved by the Ontario Land Tribunal and City Council as late as April 1, 2024. The developer submitted the Committee of Adjustment application for a minor variance for an additional 5 stories, 27 stories, on April the 29th, just, you know, like 2 weeks after the council approved the plan, the mediated settlement. On June the 24th, so that's like a couple of months later, the application was reduced to an additional 3 stories for a total of 25, the same number as the original submission. The developer indicates that the amendment was made subject to further discussions with city planning. The applicant making a Committee of Adjustment application further to engaging in a mediation process with all parties and reaching a settlement suggests bad faith bargaining and an abuse of the Committee of Adjustment process. Then secondly, in terms of the planning policy applicable, this area has gone through a process called Midtown in Focus, arranged by the city in order to deal with population increase that were expected and needed to be planned for in conjunction with the Eglinton Crosstown LRT. That was a 2-year process back in the early 2010s. And had to be approved by, had to go to the province for approval. When it came back from the province a year later, 2018, 2019, came back with 194 changes. 194 changes, including changing the height restrictions on Bayview, 6 to 8 stories under the Young Eglinton Secondary Plan became 20 to 35 stories. But only certain changes were made, 194, and a lot of them remain the same. For example, that the development within the secondary zone, which this is in, the secondary zone, not in the core zone, would be less intense. And there'd be a transition in height and scale to nearby development, and that the focus area would be predominantly characterized by mid-rise buildings with its edges designed to ensure connectivity and transition in scale and intensity to surrounding areas. So a reasonable way of addressing these conflicts in policies is to interpret the policies as meaning that 20 to 35 story range would apply to development within the Bayview focus area in close proximity to the Leaside station. And this is not. It's at the very far end on the east side of Bayview. It's right at the edge of the Bayview focus area. So as you know, you're looking at 4 tests, and those
Got 15 seconds, please.
I'm sorry?
15 seconds.
Well, I'd like to, I think this is say that it fails the planning test of maintaining the intended purpose of the official plan, and similarly for the zoning bylaw, it fails the test of minor. Let me give you an example.
Well, I think we got to wrap it up.
Well,
It's,
this like putting a 33 units is like putting a 6-story building, which is permitted by the major
your
streets
time
policy.
is up, sir. Panel members.
Maybe there'll be questions.
Sorry, but we gotta stick to time. It's only fair for everybody.
Understood.
Thank you. No questions to the member? All right, thank you. Do we have another in-person attendee here? Members? Okay. Do we have anybody on the line that wants to speak from the public?
I would like to speak.
Okay.
I would like to
Please
speak.
state your name and address.
My name is Jim Parker. I live at 312 Bessborough Drive. I'm I'm on the other side of the fence from this proposed development, right in the middle of it. Okay.
All right, so you given your address, did you not? 312 Bessborough, is that you?
312 Bessborough Drive, yes, East York.
So go ahead, you'll have 5 minutes, please.
Okay. I live in one of the three houses that back onto the subject proposed development. I would like to comment on the city staff's conditional lack of objection to the variance request. The planning staff seem to have taken a peculiar interest in the mechanical penthouse. So has the developer, as we heard earlier. The reality is that in both the current and the proposed cases, the penthouses have little visual impact because they're stepped back from the walls of the tower, have a smaller floor plate than the tower, and are clad in a featureless covering. Regardless, a penthouse has none of the negatives of three additional stories as described in the many letters and by the presentations you have heard. Discussion about the penthouse has little merit. Second of all, the staff report mentions that the Young Eglinton secondary plan and the Bayview focus area encourages intensification near the transit station, with the height gradually stepping down away from the station and towards the neighborhoods. This site is the furthest away from the station on the east side of Bayview, at the top of a steep hill and beside a residential single-family neighborhood, which includes my house. Why would it not be a better candidate for a 20-story building instead of 25, since the range can, the bottom end of the range is 20, and one would expect a 20-story building to be at the bottom of that, at the furthest away from the station. This request is not minor. It is complex and substantial, witnessed by all the supporting documentation that has been presented. This is not a case of a proposed garage encroaching on a lot line. In addition, matters related to height should be determined by a bylaw amendment as instructed by the Young Eglinton secondary plan, not by a variance. In view of the foregoing, this request should be denied. Thank you.
Thank you. Panel members, question to the resident? No question. Next resident, please. Hello?
I would like to speak.
Yes, so please state your name and your address.
I'm sorry, are you asking me to speak?
Yes, please.
Okay. My name is Joan Stevens, and I'm a member of the mediation team for BARA, the Broadway Area Residents Association. I have lived for 24 years in a mid-rise at 1818 Bayview Avenue.
Okay, can we start her clock, please, at 5 minutes? All right, so you have 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Before the provincial government in 2019 overruled years of hard work by our city councillor, Jay Robinson and others, there was a confirmed agreement that the development would be mid-rise condos, 5 to 11 stories in the Bayview area. Now developers are applying for building permits for properties ranging from 34 to 46 stories along Bayview. A quote from Jay: "The OLT is a quasi-judicial provincial body that makes the final decision on planning appeals in Toronto. The majority of new developments in Ward 15 have been appealed to and approved by the unelected, unaccountable body. We care that the developers are proposing new buildings with a total of well over 1,400 residences. This rapid increase of population will put incredible stress on the existing services and infrastructure. We care that there are few parking spots for these buildings and few spots each for non-residents. This means many more cars will be seeking parking on nearby streets, creating parking issues and making navigation more difficult. There will also be huge congestion caused by entrance and exits from these buildings. We care that developers propose many spots for bicycles, which will impact traffic patterns and clog sideways. There are currently no bike lanes on Bayview, a very busy, dangerous street. I am a senior citizen and won't be riding a bike carrying my groceries on Bayview. We care that the developers are seeking exceptions to the bylaws. The scale and non-compliant setbacks to the new buildings will cast long shadows over the neighborhood and create major wind tunnels. We care that the needs of the added population of people and dogs cannot be supported in the existing parks. We care what the impact of residences will have on our sewage system, water, and electrical grid. It will be incumbent on the city to build more capacity, and Mayor Olivia Chow has told us that the city is broke. So how will this happen? We care and appreciate that city needs new tax revenue from these tall buildings, but there will be incredible dysfunction created, which will eventually need to be fixed. This plan is short-sighted. We care that medical, dental, child care, and Sunnybrook Hospital services are already at capacity. Schools are full, and students are being shipped out of the area already. This is not NIMBYism. We appreciate that intense population growth is to be expected in conjunction with the LRT, but this is not the gentle decline in height from the intersection of Bayview and Eglinton that the city promised, which would blend into our community. We care about our community and don't want to see it overtaken by these too tall, too big, and too much developments. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for the resident panel members? Seeing none, please have the next neighbor present. Staff. Hello? Hello, neighbor. Do we have a neighbor?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we've unmuted Wayne. He can go ahead and speak.
Wayne, are you there? Can we unmute somebody else? Maybe come back to Wayne? Does Wayne know that he's unmuted? I don't think he does. He didn't desert us? He just heard us, but he's not speaking. Yes, let's try somebody else, and hopefully we can come back to Wayne. How about Mary?
Hello?
Oh, Wayne, is that you?
Hello?
Who's this? Can you state your name?
Hello?
Yes, we hear you. Who are you?
My name is John Maxim. I'm at 351 Bessborough Drive,
Okay.
which is about a block away from the proposed development.
All right. So let's, we're going to give you 5 minutes. Why don't you start now, please?
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I do not wish to repeat what has already been said, but I would like to state that I'm in support of what the previous speakers that are opposed to this development have said. I just wish to add some evidentiary information about the traffic patterns that are already very dangerous in this area. I personally have been brushed by a car at the precise intersection where this development is being created. And any increase in the amount of traffic will make it dangerous. Myself and my wife have both witnessed several people being missed very closely, as have other neighbors. So I wanted to add that to the evidentiary information. The other aspect which I would appreciate the committee to take into account is that clearly the residents of this area have been misled. In fact, we feel duped by the developer who had made the agreement not to proceed with a higher building. And we would request that the committee not allow itself to be similarly misled from a developer that clearly will not let people know exactly what they intend. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And panel members, no questions. Let's hear from the next resident, please. We have somebody else? All right.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. What's your name?
Yeah. Good afternoon. My name is Lee English.
And what's your address?
Well, I'm the land use planning lawyer for the Residents Association that's been referred to, BAYVIEW Broadway Good Planning, Inc. The address I'll give is my law firm's address, which is 22 Adelaide Street West.
Okay, perfect. So let's reset his clock to 5 minutes and let him speak. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm here today to express my client's opposition to this application and ask that the committee refuse this request. The application seeks to vary height and GFA permissions for a high-rise building that were recently established by the Ontario Land Tribunal in November 2023 following extensive settlement discussions with the applicant, our client, the city. The history of the application and settlement set out in our letter, and I can answer any questions the committee might have about the background. As noted in the approximately 75 letters of opposition filed with the committee, this application is an affront to the settlement reached with our client regarding the zoning bylaw amendment for this property. It was approved less than 6 months before the application was submitted. The planning context in Ontario and Toronto has not changed so drastically in that time to warrant this change. The city staff report provides no substantive planning rationale, as little assistance to the committee. And in fact, the applicant's presentation today didn't address any of the tests and should not be allowed to address them in reply. So we asked the committee to refuse the application for 2 reasons. Firstly, it fails all of the minor variance tests, which I'll walk through. And secondly, if the committee has any doubt about this application, it should be refused because only the applicant has a right to appeal the refusal to the TLAB. And as you'll see from the pace of my submissions today, the matters at issue here involve legal questions and technical evidence that require more time than the committee should be asked to or can provide. A TLAB hearing will allow a more fulsome review of the law and evidence, and only a decision to refuse will allow that to happen. So I'll turn now to the minor variance tests. The application doesn't maintain the intent and purpose of the official plan. The secondary plan expressly requires that heights for buildings in this secondary plan area be established through rezoning applications, not minor variance applications. Policy 5.4.3 of the secondary plan states the heights of buildings for sites and or areas will be specifically determined through rezoning applications. This policy requirement is fatal to this application and underlines the fact that it is not maintaining the intent and purpose of the OP. And not only does it directly conflict with that policy direction, it doesn't maintain the intent and purpose of the OP as it relates to limiting impacts on and ensuring appropriate transition to lands designated as neighborhoods, which immediately abut this property. This property is on the edge of the secondary plan area. It is a transitional area, and section 2.3.1.3 2.3.1.3 of the official plan requires that development in mixed-use areas adjacent to neighborhoods must be compatible, maintain adequate light and privacy, and provide a gradual transition of scale and density. The application fails in every aspect of that test. I'll turn now to the appropriate and desirable for the redevelopment of the site. This approach to land use planning, getting a zoning approval and then coming back for a minor variance should not be condoned. It's neither appropriate nor desirable. The applicant relies heavily on the considerable change circumstance. The committee should afford no weight to that submission for 3 reasons. There have been no relevant changes to the planning regime. The applications leading to the recent approvals were all a matter of public record before the settlement and tribunal approval of the zoning bylaw amendment. This information was known to the applicant when they were approved and does not change the planning context for those sites. Even so, referencing other sites without comparing those sites and adjacent land uses to the subject property and providing some sort of contextual analysis is superficial and doesn't assist the committee in evaluating the impact of this application. In fact, the applicant's planner in his affidavit supporting the approval in November 2023 said that the application, the proposal was at 22 stories, was fitting for its evolving and planned context, and that the proposed 22 stories are appropriate in the circumstance. Again, he takes me to the key issue here. When does it end? The applicant submitted 27 stories. They went down to 25. Will they not come back in a month and a year when other applications have been approved, seeking increased heights? The key way to build housing faster is to build housing and not to sit on approvals waiting for further amendments to other zoning applications for other sites to justify increasing already granted and recent approvals. The planning in the matter proposed here conflicts with the matters of provincial interest set out in the Planning Act, one of which is the resolution of planning conflicts involving public and private interests. The application not only undermines the previously resolved conflict, but creates a new one, totally contrary to those matters of provincial interest. Application is not minor. It is about impact. The 22 stories reflects an appropriate impact. Anything above that is unacceptable. 33 new units, servicing, transportation, a number of studies. And finally, we ask the committee to refuse. Again, they can appeal, we can't. That's my submissions.
Time's up.
Thank you. I'm available for any questions.
Panel members, questions of the resident? I am going to ask some questions. So my understanding is you're actually the lawyer representing the group. Is that correct? Is that
the Residents Association, Bayview, Broadview, Good Planning Inc., BBGPI, who were a party to the original OLT appeal? Yes.
Okay, so that's good. So I'm going to ask you a few questions. So just bear with me. I'm just trying to get
absolutely.
I'm trying to get a better sense because I mean we've got a lot of residents. They're saying a lot of things, but I presume that you've had some discussions with them, so maybe you can put it all together for me. Well, the one thing that's missing, that I see missing from your case, and I sort of want to know why. Like you don't have an expert, a planner, or anything like that, or do you? Are we going to hear from any experts?
Well, not today, sir, but we only have 5 minutes to speak, and so I'm here to advocate on behalf of the test. Okay. The T-Lab would be an appropriate place for us to call planning evidence in opposition to this proposal.
Okay, so that's one question. Another question I have is, so we've got a staff report, and the staff report appears to be fairly positive, and it would have, this planning staff look at the 4 tests. So maybe I just want you to comment on that. Why do you think the staff report would be positive if you're saying that this is against the 4 tests?
It's an interesting question. We were surprised to see it, and certainly the late Councillor Robinson was actively involved in this application when it was before the tribunal. The staff report does not address the tests. It is scant analysis and takes the applicant's studies and reports on their face. minor variance application is a very different beast than a zoning bylaw application where the required studies and reports are vetted and subject to third-party review. The staff did not object to it, and that's fine. And perhaps it's the sort of telemarketing magic of saying, oh, we're asking for 27, now we'll get 25 as sort of some kind of concession.
Right.
But the impacts on the neighbors are not evaluated by the staff report, and the impacts to the neighbors are being presented to you loudly today.
And I guess just to finish, like you raised an issue about being contrary to provincial interest. And so that's an interesting one to me because typically we focus on the 4 tests, but you're asking us, if I'm correct, I just want to understand what your argument is there. Are you saying to us that in addition to the 4 tests, we should look at the provincial planning guidelines? And are you saying, so 1, we should look at that, and 2, you're providing us with a reason why you think it's contrary to provincial guidelines? Is that correct, or can you please explain that part of your argument?
I'm happy to explain that. Thank you for asking. So, pursuant to Section 2 of the Planning Act, all decisions under the Planning Act, whether it be by the minister, a council, a planning board, the tribunal, the committee, have to have regard to certain matters of provincial interest. One of those is the resolution of planning conflicts involving public and private interests. Those prevail in every circumstance, minor variance, zoning, official plan, site plan. And I think it's captured under the appropriate and desirable test, and that's where we structured it in our letter, that it is not appropriate and desirable to disregard matters of provincial interest, which are set out in the Planning Act and guide all Planning Act decisions.
But what you're saying is that this is contrary to provincial interest because it doesn't further the settlement of planning issues because it's contrary to an agreement that was already made. Is that what you're saying?
Well, there are not. Excuse me, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I'm not trying to cross-examine you. I'm trying to get to the heart of your argument so I can understand it, so we can have some guidance for our panel members. And I wanted to sort of be brief. So basically, is what you're saying is that this is contrary to provincial planning guidelines and contrary to provincial interest because it doesn't further an agreement that was already entered into. Is that what you're saying? I don't want it to be yes or no, but it probably has to be.
I know.
Okay, good.
So, yes, and
I don't want to bore the rest of my panelists. I want us to get on with this, but I think, okay, we got another question.
If I could just clarify if I could just clarify that answer, it talks about the resolution of planning conflicts.
Okay.
We did that in November. Okay. They have reopened the conflict.
Yeah, I don't want to bore everybody with this legalese, but I had to understand it. And now Mr. Kabua has a question.
Yes, Councillor. I also understand you stating that this application causes adverse impact on the neighborhood in general. Is that the case?
Yes, absolutely, sir. The negotiated resolution involved a reduced height to 22 stories, but an increased tower floor plate size. The application before you, so that was the trade-off, larger floor plate, reduced height. Now what they're doing is seeking a taller application on the basis of the same increased tower floor plate, meaning increased density. It exacerbates the impact. So there are impacts related to traffic, servicing, shadow, privacy, overlook, all of which are addressed in the official plan when talking about mitigating impacts on lands adjacent to neighborhoods, which are immediately abutting the site.
Yes, sir. I would also like to understand. So the applicant stated that 3 other towers, which may be even taller than this one, have been approved within the vicinity recently. What do you say about those approvals? So how do they impact this one or affect the neighborhood?
Well, it's an interesting question. Certainly, those approvals were made after this application was approved. So impacts on servicing and transportation would have been made on the basis of the 25 the 22-story approval in November. And secondly, all of those applications were a matter of public record. I've said that, so I won't repeat it. But what the applicant hasn't done is explained how those sites are similar to this site. For example, 1840 Bayview on the other side of Bayview Avenue is surrounded by retail, commercial, there's a cemetery and a park to the north. Like, those site-specific considerations need to be evaluated. You can't say 31 on one site means 31 on another.
Thank you, sir. That was all my questions.
Okay, I think that's it for our questions. Thank you, and let's have the next resident, please.
We have unmuted Brooke.
Okay, would you please state your name and your address? Hello? Hello?
Am I on?
Yes. What's your name?
My name is Brooke Biscoe.
Okay. Do we have her in the, is it her or him? I can't, her? No? Is it not on the list? We have it? Do we have the last name of this person? Why do I not see it here? Well, I mean, if you have it, then I'll accept that. You've got it. Like, staff have the name. Okay. Do you have the? Would you please? It's Madam, correct? Is that right? Are you a her? Or he? What's your pronouns? I can't.
I'm not sure if I'm being asked to speak. My name is Brooke Biscoe.
Okay. What are your pronouns? What can I address you by? Her? Her, she? I'm sorry, because I don't have your name even in front of me, so it's hard for me to tell. I think it's a she. Could you please state, madam, could you please state your name? You stated your name, please state your address. Could you please state your address?
36 Rumsey Road.
Rumsey Road. Okay, perfect. Now you've got.
Yeah, and I'm a male, so
Yeah,
but I very briefly.
I apologize. It's kind of hard for me to
No.
hear over that, or to even understand the name, or to even spell it. So I apologize.
No.
Please go ahead.
Fair enough. I really will say very little, but it's already been said that, again, an agreement had been in place by the developer and the Broadway committee, and we're now having to abuse really the committee of adjustment in this process. And I think that it's been said so much that this is a bylaw issue, not a planning or a committee of adjustment hearing, and it should be referred to TLAB as it's been identified by other people on the call. And I really think that those issues really need to be considered by the committee, because to me it's a really abuse of the committee of adjustment powers. And I'll say no more. That's all I'll say for now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. Panel members, questions? No further questions? Further member of the public who wants to speak? We have a neighbor there.
Wayne Silverman.
Okay, Wayne Silverman. And your address?
Yes. I am 374 Broadway Avenue.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, you have 5 minutes maximum.
Thank you.
If we appreciate if you present the new things, if you concentrate on new things where possible.
Yeah, I'll be very brief because I think everyone else has been very descriptive, and I won't have anything new to add on to that. I'm approximately 150 meters away from the site, and the only thing that I'll bring up here over and above is if this application gets approved by the Committee of Adjustments, then what's preventing the towers across the road from then submitting a minor variance to the Committee of Adjustments and then going from 27 to 31, 31 to 35, and so forth. And so, as everyone said, this is not a minor variance. They're adding floors, they're adding people, they're adding traffic, and that should not be something for the Committee of Adjustments to deal with. When I did a renovation on my house, I was looking for minor variances of a foot and so forth, but it was not impacting traffic. It was not impacting any of the city services and so forth. And that is what I believe the committee's purpose is. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Panel members, no questions. Thank you. Let's hear from the next neighbor, please. Do we have more neighbors? We've exhausted the neighbors.
Through the chair, that's it. For the record, Mary Allen, Jim Heller, Andrew Chessel no longer wish to speak.
Okay, perfect. All right, now we go back to the applicant. Mr. Applicant, you get up to 5 minutes now to rebut the comments raised by the neighbors. Your focus should please be on those comments made by the neighbors. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, members of committee. I'm just going to say that there is a comment about the Young Eglinton secondary plan saying that height should be determined by only zoning bylaw amendment in the bylaw. And I'm just going to say this committee has dealt with a number of C of A's for increased height and increased density in the Young Eglinton Center, where there had been OLT approvals, where there had been settlements with other neighborhood groups and the city. I can cite 2400 Young and Roselawn. I can cite a number of sites along Broadway in the Redpath vicinity, all within the exact same secondary plan. I'm going to say that the developments that have been approved across the street are in the exact same Bayview focus area that is the subject site is located. Not surprising. And the truth is the maximum height in this focus area is 35 stories. The minimum height as set out in the range is 20. We are proposing 25. The northern limit of the Bayview focus area is on the west side of Bayview, north of the commercial building, which is where the Shoppers Drug Mart and the Whole Food is located. So we're not at the top end limit. There is no distinction in the Bayview focus area between the east and the west side. And Mr. English said, how are they different? Well, that they're surrounded on the west side, they're surrounded by commercial. Well, like the site, on the west side of those sites are neighborhood homes, designated neighborhoods, single detached dwellings. And he failed to bring that to your attention, which I think is really not very helpful. I want to leave some time. Mr. Mark Flowers is in the audience, and he wishes to raise some things to you, and I should stop talking now.
Well, hang on a second. Who's he? Is he an applicant?
He is the solicitor for my client.
Yeah, but we don't need to hear him because you had your 5 minutes, and now we're having questions. If he wants to answer my questions, I'm willing to ask some questions. But he doesn't get an extra 5 minutes because you only get 5 minutes as the applicant. Got it? Do you want to? I've got some questions anyway. I'm happy to ask them to Mr. Flowers, but I'm not willing to entertain 5 more minutes to the applicant. So do you want me to ask questions? I'll ask them to your lawyer instead of to you.
Just to clarify, Mr. Chairman, I wasn't proposing to take an extra 5 minutes.
You're
within
just here to answer questions?
It was within Mr. Goldberg's 5 minutes.
Oh, okay.
He was just ceding. I think he had about 2 minutes left. So.
Okay. So you mean you wanna make rebuttal within his?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, Mr. Goldberg was as a planner was replying to the substance of the applications.
Go ahead, continue on. I guess they stopped it, so you've still got.
Thank you.
2 minutes.
Yes, and I was just hoping to be able to reply to some of the process issues you've heard.
Yeah.
You heard from a number of the residents use terms like abusive process, an affront to the settlement, bad faith bargaining, and so forth. And I just want to make sure that the committee is aware of the full factual context. So there was a settlement, as you've heard. That settlement was only with the City of Toronto and the group that Mr. English represents. So you've heard from other residents, we didn't have a settlement with them. The settlement was only with those two parties. And it's noteworthy that the City of Toronto, and you've noted it, Mr. Chair, and other members of the committee, the city staff report indicates no objection to this application, notwithstanding that earlier settlement. It's subject only to one condition, which we are accepting of that condition, which basically ties the approval to the plans that were submitted, and that's a fairly standard item. I would also say that although Mr. English didn't bring it to your attention, the settlement did explicitly contemplate the potential for future applications. So, you know, while it didn't indicate necessarily that there would be, it did contemplate that potential. In terms of the timing, because you've heard, well, you know, we just got this settlement, and in fact, I think Mr. Cattell even referenced April 2024. That's inaccurate. This settlement was about a year ago, and I put that into context because, as this committee will likely know, there was a time not too many years ago where there was a 2-year prohibition on making applications for variances from site-specific zoning bylaws. The provincial government, however, amended that about a year or two ago and basically removed that prohibition. The result is that a minor variance application can be made at any time after a site-specific rezoning approval. And again, this was done last summer, was the settlement. It was endorsed by the tribunal in the fall. So that's where things stand. I think that addresses those comments. Needless to say, we vehemently deny the allegations that this is an abusive process of the committee or that it's improper. It's an entirely proper application that's been made. It should be considered on its merits, not on process matters. And on the merits you've heard from Mr. Goldberg, and certainly I adopt his submissions. I'd be happy to answer any questions, or I'm sure Mr. Goldberg would as well at this point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So panel members, do you have questions? I've got some questions. I don't want to bore you guys. Maybe you have better questions. I'll ask my questions, but everybody else gets the chance first. Yeah, Mr. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Can you just confirm that your colleague said the maximum height in the area is 35? As I didn't get it well, 35 meters or 35 floors? The maximum height in the area.
I think
that's the secondary plan in the Bayview focus area, and it has a height range of 20 stories to 35 stories.
Thank you, sir.
Like, Mr. Kabu, you have more, or otherwise I'm going to have some questions. So it's, I guess, like from the applicant's perspective, is it okay? I'll just ask your lawyers here, Mr. Flowers. I'll ask them. They're really more legal questions anyway. I'm okay with your client answering them directly, but these are probably, as I asked the other lawyer, I'm going to ask you. So I asked him about provincial interest, and he made the point that there was an agreement that's in accordance with provincial interest to settle the matter for the proper planning in the province. So you already have an agreement, you have a plan, go ahead and build it, don't come back within a year. How do you address that provincial interest issue?
Yeah, so I'd say it's quite a stretch. I heard Mr. English's comment, but I think in fairness and with respect, I think it's quite a stretch. As I mentioned, there was a settlement, obviously endorsed by City Council even, but that was a settlement of an appeal of a zoning bylaw amendment application. And so that was ultimately accepted. This is a brand new application. It's not uncommon, certainly in the City of Toronto, I presume at this committee, probably at others, for applicants to receive approvals through a rezoning application and subsequently seek amendments, sometimes with increased height and density by way of a minor variance. So it doesn't in any way offend that matter of provincial interest. And of course, there's other matters of provincial interest, like the supply of housing, which of course we all know we're in a housing supply crisis. That's one of the things this does. Of course, there are limits to that. You have to test each application on its merits in terms of impacts. That has been done. And you know, the shadow impact, for example, showing virtually no increase or very minimal. And other studies have been done as well that I think you referred to. So we would say that to the extent that you have to consider matters of provincial interest, that has been done and that's been satisfied.
Okay, so I mean, I'm going to say, so first of all, as far as the panel goes, I'm the chair. I don't get a vote really unless it becomes a tie. but there were a few things said that I felt maybe need some elucidation, like the issue about the abuse of process. Like, this has gone through past the point of a committee of adjustment. If we now approve this based on the current Planning Act rules, the residents are precluded from an appeal. Whereas if we basically refuse it, it almost would appear to me to be more consistent with the administration of justice, because then eventually you'll go back to the parties that you were before in the first instance, and you get to either settle with the residents again, be heard by them, rather than coming to us as sort of a lower body. When you've already been higher and they've dealt with these issues, shouldn't it really be, from an administration of justice a position, dealt with by another party and not that's had this before it, not us?
No, I don't believe so, sir, with all due respect, Mr. Chairman. Again, the Planning Act obviously had rights of appeal by neighbors, and as you noted, I think even in your introductory remarks at 215, those were changes made by the provincial government. In their wisdom, they saw fit to restrict certain rights of appeal. In my view, with the greatest of respect, that should not be a factor of this committee in determining the merits of this application, about basically saying, well, we otherwise think we should approve it, but we're not going to, because then the residents won't have a right of appeal.
I understand what you're saying, but we've had an argument about the provincial interest, and part of that provincial interest would be the administration of justice and the settlement of matters. So on that regard, and I'm not saying that we would decide it just because we feel that we're not, like, we can decide it, but I'm saying, you know, if we look at all those things and the deciding factor is the provincial interest and the administration of justice, then would it not be appropriate to refuse it on that basis?
No, I mean, your mandate as the committee is fairly clear and set out in the Planning Act, as you all well know, and that is to assess each application on its individual merits and assess it against the 4 tests.
Including, plus also, as the resident's lawyer pointed out, the provincial interest matter, which would include such other things as administration of justice, fairness, and so forth, and provincial policy. But anyway, let's, you know, we don't have to come to a resolution. It'll be up to I'm asking these questions so that my fellow panel members can maybe think about them, because I've thought about them. But we don't have to come to a resolution, they do. But there's another thing that's kind of bothering me, and that was what your client said about the economic issues. And I know it's sort of a throwaway, like an obiter thing, but it stuck with me. And it sticks with me in a way that sort of almost as if your client prejudiced themselves by saying, well, this is really about economics, right? That you know, it's a tough marketplace and we need to make money, so we're bringing this application. And I'm almost thinking, you know, if I could paraphrase in a blunt way, I'm almost thinking that prejudices your client by the words that they said, because it's supposed to be planning, and there your client threw out there that they're really bringing this for economic reasons, for their own purposes, rather than, you know, like, I don't decide anyway, but my fellow panelists may have heard that. I'm going to give you a chance to put that into some context, because it's disturbing me.
Sure. So, and I'll maybe turn it over momentarily to Mr. Goldberg, because he was the one, and he's not my client, of course, he's my client's planner, okay, who introduced it. Certainly, Mr. Goldberg is a professional, reputable land use planner. He made the application. I believe there was a submission from his office. So it's clear that there are planning merits for the application. Obviously, I'll let Mr. Goldberg speak for himself, but I think it was just simply putting into context some realities and the realities of the need for increased housing. So I don't know, Mr. Goldberg, if he's available, because your question is really posed to something Mr. Goldberg said, I thought it might be better for him to respond.
Okay, well, I let you.
Mr. Chair.
Maybe he wants to put it into context too, so I'm okay with him addressing.
Yeah, in context, Mr. Chair, that the only thing I'll add is the only reason I said I raised the economic circumstances today is because this is the reason why housing is being delayed right now. The increase of 33 units assists in the viability and assists in bringing this project to market. If the project is not being brought to market, it translates into a planning issue, and that is housing. The housing won't be brought to market. So it's not just about making money. It's about creating a viable project that can bring the project to market and bring the housing forward.
Okay, I understand it. So I don't have any other questions, and I probably over-exceeded what chair should do, but I thought this is an important application to try to get those out there. So I'm done, okay? So I think we're ready to go into committee, are we? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flowers. All right, let's go into committee, and I'll look to, I'm not saying anything else. You've heard from me. Mr. Kaboo.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion on this application. Yes, having heard about the applicant regarding the application, and having heard about approximately 8 residents who are opposing this application, including a lawyer, and having heard the legal submission of the opponent's lawyer, and also having reviewed and considered the staff report, which suggests that we approve. Let me just get there. Yeah, so having considered and reviewed the staff report, which recommend that the committee, if it were to approve the applications, impose the condition, that the building height and the size and configuration of the mechanical penthouse be developed substantially in accordance with the roof plan A207 and having a maximum height of 25 stories. And then also having assessed the applicants against the 4 tests and considered the fairness toward the opposing parties, I'm quite inclined to recommend that this application be approved. And although I also note that the point about the applicants raising the economic, confessing to making the minor variance application on the economic ground was a factor, but I still give it a little weight, so I will recommend that this panel approve this application subject to the condition recommended by the staff report.
Okay, so we've got a motion on the floor to approve subject to the staff report with the conditions in the staff report. Does staff heard, like, does staff understand that wording in that motion, or does it need to be clarified for staff? Okay, so staff understand that. So we got a motion on the floor. Do we have a seconder of the motion?
I'll second that motion, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we do have a seconder, and that's Mr. Bartolo. Do you want to say why you're seconding that?
Yeah, no problem, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. Despite maybe some of the rhetoric and the back and forth and whether past deals were disingenuous or not, regardless, I mean, the committee has an application before it and has an obligation to make a ruling on that application on questions of whether it's an abuse of the system or whether it should have been brought here. While, that can be debated, nonetheless, we have an obligation to hear the case on the merits of itself, right? And when I look at the merits of this itself, I'm looking at a 22-story building that is going to be built, right? And I look at the marginal impact of the increase that's being requested, and I don't really see a large adverse impact on the local community, despite what some may think. And obviously, there's some disagreement to that. So when I look at relative what's being asked for relative to what's being approved, I do see it as minor. When we consider some of the other comments that were made on the economics of it, it doesn't really sway me. The whole thing is an economic venture. If it's not profitable, it won't get built. If no housing gets built, then the City of Toronto and the province is not better for it. So despite the process that led us here today, whether one agrees or disagrees, I look at it based on the merits of the case that's in front of me and the 4 tests and that relative impact to the local community. And I'm in favor of my colleague's position here, and I'll support it.
Okay, so we've got a motion, we've got a seconder, and we have 2 other panel members who can either speak to this because it's contentious. If you disagree with it, I will give you your chance to say something now, or I will call the question on the motion. So I'm looking at panel members if they want to say anything, and they are, well,
I don't want to say anything, but I support the application. I agree with my colleagues, and I support the motion.
okay. So all those in favor of the motion? And it is carried. So thank you. Thank you to members of the public who have attended and provided helpful comments to the committee, and thank you to the applicant for their presentation as well. Let's call a brief 10-minute break at this point, and we'll come back at 4:30. Thank you. Okay, so we are back and we're continuing with our hearing. And we just finished 15. So let us go to 16. Let me just pull it up. Where is it? Okay, so we're on to item 16. Item 16 is 657 Oriole Parkway. This is to construct additions to existing dwelling and modify parking spaces. There's 7 variances. They deal with the balcony, the front porch, parking spaces, floor space, and other things. We have a transportation report. Do we have a applicant's agent here to present? State your name, state your address, and tell us if you're making any changes, please.
This is Andrew Vesna. I'm the homeowner in this case. Address is 657 Oriole Parkway.
All right.
And no changes.
All right. I look to my panel members to see if they need a presentation from the owner. Do they? So my fellow panel members have shaken their heads saying they do not need to hear from you. You're entitled to speak to us, but usually it's a positive sign when the panel doesn't need to hear from you and there's nobody here opposing you. Don't need to use your time for much here. Do you want to say anything to us?
Yeah, I'm happy to save the time. It's fine.
Okay. Thank you so much. Let's go to our panel. Let's go back into committee, and I look to my panel members. Do we have a motion for this? Mr. Marziari.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to make a motion. The applicant is requesting 7 variances that are they appear to be quite minor to me. I think they meet the 4 tests, so I'd like to make a motion with no condition, as transportation also has no objection to the application.
Okay. Mr. Marziari's motion, Mr. Bartolo's seconding it. All those in favor, I see all hands up, and it is unanimous. Congratulations. You have your approval, and we are moving to item 17, which is 159 Alfred Avenue. This is a proposal to construct a new dwelling. There are 4 variances. They deal with lot coverage, height. The applicant has informed staff in the staff report about, the staff has identified in his staff report that the applicant has informed staff about revisions which are outlined in the comments, including modified variance number 3 for height and modified variance number 4 for height. So we will turn it over to the applicant. And if you can state your name and address, and then before you get going, also state if you're making any changes, if you're making the changes that the staff have identified in their report. So first of all, your name and your address, sir.
Sure. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Ron Safapur, applicant and agent of the owner. We have only 4 variances, and as you said, we modified.
Well, let's get your address.
My address is 101 Forest Heights Boulevard,
okay.
Toronto, Ontario, M2L 2K7.
101 Forest Heights Boulevard. And are you making changes, or you are making the changes that the staff have said you were making? Maybe just tell us what those are. I've said what they are. Are you agreeing that those are what they are?
Yes.
Okay, so that's number 3 is going to from 10.83 to 10.5, and number 4 is going from 8.7 to 8.
8 meters, yes.
Any other changes?
No, thank you.
Let's go back into my panel members and just check with them if they need a presentation here. And they are they shaking their heads? They are shaking their heads, which means you don't have to do a presentation. It's your lucky day, but you can do the presentation if you want, or you can just let us deal with this. What do you want to do?
Okay, I don't have.
You don't know what you
No.
want. You don't really want to make a presentation. You'd rather we do your work for you. So let's go into committee. I'm
Yes.
taking that as a yes. You don't want to make a presentation. Let's go into a committee. I'll look at my committee members and see if we get a motion. And I see Mr. Bartolo wanting to make a motion.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I think this is a fairly straightforward application. The applicants worked with the city and made the amendments before us here today. I'm satisfied with them. Therefore, I'll put forward a motion to approve this application subject to the following revisions. Variance number 3 be changed to 10.5 meters. Variance number 4 be changed to 8 meters even.
Okay, that's a nice motion from Mr. Bartolo. And I look to my right and I see a seconder, Mr. Kubu. And I now will put it to a vote. All those in favor, and it is unanimous. Congratulations, you have
Thank you.
approval. Thank you. Now let us move to item 18, which is 67 Glenview Avenue. And this is to construct a 2-story addition to the rear of the existing dwelling, and there are 2 variances. And we have a number of documents, including 3 letters of support. And the 2 variances deal with the side yard and the floor space. We have an agent for the applicant somewhere in virtual space. Can we put him on the phone for us? Is he there? Hello?
Good afternoon. This is Jonathan Hatch,
Jonathan
6 Bishop Street,
Okay. So
M6 Street, M5 bar 1 and 2.
are you making any changes from what we have before us, or is your application as it is?
The application is as is.
Okay. Now I'm just going to look to my left and right and see if my panel members have an interest in hearing you. They have an interest in making a decision, not so much an interest in hearing you. You have the right to speak to us, but I think the panel has already signaled to me that you don't have to do that, and it is your lucky day unless you really want to talk about it. So what do you want to do? Do you want to talk about it, or do you want to let us decide it?
3 in a row, I'll take it.
You're gonna let us decide it. I go to my colleagues into committee, and I look to Mr. Marziari.
I just have a quick question.
Oh, he has a question.
Yeah,
So
quick
we are
question.
out of committee, back to the
Sorry.
member and asking a question, back to the applicant and asking a question.
Yeah, I see on the file there's a revised site plan. I wonder what is the change from the original site plan? Just can you briefly speak to that, please?
Of course, it was actually the neighbor on the westerly side that requested that the length of their addition be shown in relation to ours, so it could be on file. And once they saw that our addition was actually stepped further back from theirs, we actually gained their support.
We good with that? Let's go back into committee.
I'm
Mr.
ready to make a
Marziari,
motion.
you are itching to make a motion, I think?
Yes, I think it's a fairly straightforward application. It's just 2 variances. Again, it's meeting the 4 tests, so I'd like to make a motion to approve with no condition.
Okay, got a motion to approve, and Mr. Bartolo is seconding that. All those in favor? And it is unanimous. Congratulations. We're on to item 19.
Thank you.
And item 19, you're welcome. Item 19 is 1 Marquette Avenue. This one has 11 variances. It's to allow for the expansion of an existing building through a construction of 2-story addition atop of an existing structure, facilitating the construction of an additional 20 dwelling units and an overall building height of 6 stories and a total of 44 units. So we have an arborist report, a staff report, a transportation report. To summarize those 11 variances, minimum area lot for landscaping, outdoor vehicle spaces, lack of vehicle access, and others. The staff report deals with the right of first refusal when repairs or renovations are completed, and minimal financial compensation, and notice when a tenant receives notice of termination. So staff do have some requirements here. We've got a agent on the phone, do we? Yes. So Mr. Agent, could you please state your name and your address? Hello?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon.
Yes. Hello.
Good afternoon. My name is Adam Layton. I'm an associate principal with Goldberg Group, and we are the agents for the owner of this property. Our office address is 2098 Avenue Road.
Thank you. Now, are you making any changes to this application, or is it as we have it on the file?
It is as you have it on the file.
All right. Let me just look to my panel members and see. I see Mr. Bartolo is questioning. Do you want to ask a question to the applicant? Okay, Mr. Applicant Agent, we've got a question for you before you get going. Let's take the question, and then we'll see about whether it's not going to take up your time from your presentation if we require it. Let's let Mr. Bartolo ask the question.
Yeah,
That's
thank you,
okay
Mr.
with
Chair. Through you, just before we get to any presentation, I just want to understand of the 11 variances, which are existing conditions? Because as I understand it, this is an addition to the top of the building, and therefore I suspect some are existing conditions.
I would say in a way, all but one of them are really related to the existing condition. There are some questions about parking and loading. Those are, again, we're trying to bring the building as close to current standards as possible. Similarly with the amenity area. And we're certainly improving the condition of the landscaped open space. So really the only thing that is related to the specific addition would be the FSI.
Okay. That's good for you. Let me canvass our panel members to see what their appetite is. Let's just, shaking heads means you don't need to hear from them. Do people not need to hear from them, or do you want to hear from the applicant? You're okay? You interested in hearing from him? You don't care? Pardon? Okay, Mr. Kubu is kind of interested in hearing a little bit why there's 11 variances here. So, okay, so Mr. Layton, you have up to 5 minutes. You may not need it all, but our panel members have not let you off the hook immediately. So go ahead and up to 5 minutes. Tell us why you've got 11 variances, why you think they should be approved.
Thank you, sir. And I will ask the committee, whoever's controlling the screen, to bring up my presentation. Hopefully that did get circulated out to the committee members. We are here to talk about the existing building located at 1 Marquette Avenue. It is on the southwest corner, as you'll see on slide 2, of Bathurst Street and Marquette. It is an existing 4-story apartment building, which was constructed some time ago. It is abutted up to the north and the south by 7-story apartment buildings. It is a purpose-built rental building, and the proposal today before us is to maintain it as a purpose-built rental building, albeit with 2 additional floors added onto the building to add a total of 20 more units, bringing the total on site to 44. Moving to the next slide, you'll see the existing condition of the property. This is the view from Google Street View from Marquette Avenue, and probably most important is the view from Bathurst Street on the next slide. You'll see that the building parking supply is located on the southern side of the property. It currently has 0 setback from the property line. There is no landscaping in there whatsoever. There's no loading space. There's no waste collection area. And then it's a little difficult to see, but in the south facade of the building, those are what I would call garage bays. They facilitate 2 parking spaces in each bay, but as per zoning standards and definitions today, only defined would permit 1 space. Moving down, you'll see the survey, which just again indicates the condition of the property. The next slide shows the proposed site, the internal floor plan showing those garage bays that I've referenced. Moving to the next slide shows what we are proposing to do to, I would say, enhance the building. So among other things, we are providing a new outdoor amenity area along the Marquette Avenue frontage. We are upgrading the building entrance and walkway. We are adding a new building entrance off of Bathurst Street, which would have bike parking. We are putting in a landscaped area along the Bathurst frontage to regularize that driveway and provide some greenery and screening. And we are also providing an outdoor bulky waste storage area. So that is one of the variances that is triggered. The other variances are related to the lack of setback of the parking. Even though we are not relocating, we are restriping the parking, which the zoning examiner has explained to us they consider to violate the lawful non-conforming, and thus requires variances to permit the setback, zero setback for the parking. The next slide shows, in terms of the floor plan, what is being improved. So if you could scroll down to the next slide. Whoever's controlling, can you please scroll to the next slide? This shows the floor plan changes that are being made. One of the garage bays on the western facade is being converted to an internal waste storage area, whereas right now it is just simply a number of bins lined up along the western building facade, where there is a driveway connection out to Marquette. 3 of the bays are being retained, but would only fit 1 parking space based on the current definition. 1 bike storage room is being proposed, and just given the floor to ceiling height of that room, we're seeking minor relief on the defined height of a bike parking space. And then in orange, you'll see 2 areas. One of the garage bays is being converted to amenity space, and then the other on the northern facade would be the interior amenity space connected to the exterior space. And in this regard, I have a bit of a difference of opinion with the zoning examiner. And this might require the use of one of the lesser known powers of the committee under 45 sub 2B, which allows the committee to determine where uses, buildings or structures are defined generally in a zoning bylaw, whether, in the opinion of the committee, the proposed use conforms with the permitted uses. And in this regard, what I'm getting at is, if you wanted to zoom in on that second amenity space, what we're proposing is a lounge and multi-purpose area, but there would also be some laundry facilities located along the walls of that area. To me, I believe that laundry can be more of a social activity. It brings people together, and we've provided space to do more than just do laundry in that room. The definition of amenity space in the bylaw is somewhat general. It just means outdoor or indoor space on the lot that is communal, check. Available for use of the occupants of a building, check. For recreational or social activities. So here we have a space that could be used for both laundry and recreational and social activities. That has triggered one of the variances, number 6, requiring that outdoor space does not need to be connected to an indoor space.
Your time is up. Let me
okay.
Go back to our panel members and see if there's further questions. Mr. Kubu has a question.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have a quick question. Transportation services recommended deferral of these applications. Were you aware of this, and how have you interacted with them to correct the issues raised?
So this application is being considered concurrent to a site plan control application, for which we provided a full traffic study, including site circulation diagrams and parking support. The lack of loading space was one of the issues dealt with in the parking study. Quite simply put, it is not possible to fit a type G loading space on the property. A truck simply cannot maneuver through the site with the turning radii without clipping the building or further reducing the parking supply. What we have proposed, and again, this I think would be better suited through the site plan process rather than the variance, is that, and perhaps you should go, we could go to the site plan so I can describe it and you can see what I'm talking about. There is the existing access from Marquette along the west boundary of the site. It is a one-way direction only. I've proposed to staff, and we will be hopefully provide them with materials to demonstrate this to their satisfaction, that control could be provided in the form of barriers, such as a bollards or a gate, to restrict access through that location, so that it would function as a loading area. But I would suggest, for the purposes of the committee's consideration, it would not be possible to have that meet the definition of a loading space. So the variance we've requested, simply that there be no type G loading space, would still be appropriate either way. What I can also suggest is the current operations of the building, again, have that space used primarily for the waste bins. That has been going on for probably 40 years or more. It is functioning appropriately. We have made improvements in terms of the interior waste and bulky waste areas. We've provided a traffic study which shows how the use of that laneway to access the waste collection area would still function. But quite simply put, we will not be able to provide a type G loading space in any event without substantial alterations to the building. In terms of the deferral, it would be our strong desire not to be deferred. We've been working with staff on this file for going on several years. We did take our time to look at all opportunities to facilitate loading, parking, bike parking, amenity, things like that. And quite simply put, the financial feasibility of the project is at risk if further delays are experienced. The owner does not want to put people out during construction. And so as natural attrition has occurred in rental space, as units become available, they have opted not to rent them back out simply because they don't want to put someone in who would then need to relocate during construction. So the building is primarily vacant at the present time, and we feel that this matter could be addressed through site plan, just through design interventions on the site. But the variance, again, would not be altered based on those interventions.
All right. Further questions? Let's go into committee. Do we have a motion? Anybody want to bring a motion? I'm looking.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. Given the explanation provided by the applicants today, and in light of the staff report recommending that renovation, given that the staff report mentioned that the application is mainly focused on renovating the unit and then submitting them to the Residential Tenancy Act, whereby the applicant will have after renovation, need to provide the tenants the right of first refusal and minimum financial compensation. I'm quite satisfied that this application meets the test, and would like to suggest that the panel approve the application.
All right, so we got a motion to approve, right?
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Bartolo is going to second that motion. All those in favor, and it is unanimous. Congratulations. We are now on to...
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We're now on to item 20. So item 20 is 25 Longwood Drive. That's to construct a new swimming pool. There's a rear yard setback issue. There is a letter of objection. There is a letter of support. And we have a resident, a neighbor who is apparently here. And we have the applicant, the owner. Is the owner here?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we will unmute Ken. Ken.
Yes.
Ken Davis.
Thank you.
Yeah, he will be speaking.
Okay. Is that the owner? Or is
Good
that-
afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, I'm Ken Davis.
Okay.
I'm Ken Davis. I'm the owner of the home at 25 Longwood Drive.
Okay.
Yeah, so essentially we've already gone through a ZAP approval to construct the pool, but we were, and that approval requires the 10-foot rear yard setback. In this particular case, due to the very irregular nature of the backyard.
Okay, so I guess we have to hear from you because there is a neighbor. Let's start the clock ticking, and he's given his name, he's given his address. Have you made any changes to this application? I guess we should get that out of the way, or is it as filed? Hello?
Yes, it's as filed.
Okay, so now we'll give you your 5 minutes. It'll start ticking now. Go ahead and please make your case.
Oh, thank you very much. So as you can see, the pool is located in our rear yard. Perhaps the site plan would be valuable to view. And essentially, if we could look at the site plan, the pool is in the rear, what's defined as the rear yard. And so when we made the original application and plan for the house and the pool, we thought that there was a 6-foot setback, both on our side and on the rear. But of course, technically there's a 10-foot setback on the rear. As you can see, we have this very pointy rear yard. So the neighbor to the, I guess more or less to the south, we have the 6-foot setback, which we're compliant with. And the other neighbor, we have the 10 feet. What we'd like to do is have 6 feet on both sides of that corner. And we feel that the intent of the bylaw is really to provide, essentially we have two side yards, two neighboring side yards, and we just like to place the pool 6 feet from both property lines instead of 6 feet from one and 10 feet from the other one. And it just makes the flow, of the landscaping in the backyard, just works better. And that's essentially all we're asking for. So we already have a ZAP approval for the 10-foot offset.
Okay, any questions to the applicant? I see none. Thank you. We have a neighbor. Do we have a neighbor that wants to speak to this? And are they available to speak? Hello? Neighbor? No neighbor present? Yeah. What happened to them?
We've unmuted a Ruth.
Okay. So, neighbor, could you please state your name and your address? Hello, neighbor. Staff, is neighbor there? Are they able to speak? Why can I not hear them? Well, we can't have the neighbor being silent for this long.
Ruth, if you can hear us, you're able to speak now. We've unmuted you.
Well, I'm willing to give her like a minute.
Mr. Chair, why don't you stand this down, go on to number 31, and we'll try and reach Ruth.
Okay, applicant, our neighbor person has not been able to get to speak, so we're going to just put this aside for a moment while we hear some others, and then we'll try to bring the neighbor back, right? That's what staff are going to do? Okay. So let's go to 21. #21 is 3 Collision Boulevard. 5 variances, proposal for a rear addition and a new deck, rear deck. There's, the 5 variances are side yard setback, rear deck, building length and depth and coverage. And we've got a forestry report, and we've got a staff report. Do we have the applicant on the line for item number 21?
Hello.
Who's that?
Hi, it's
Who do we have on
Igor Koch here.
Who's that?
It's Igor Koch. I'm in behalf of Bruno Lopez, which is we work together, right?
Okay, so just, what's your name so we can clearly hear it so staff can record it? What's your name again?
Igor Koch.
Igor Cook?
Igor Koch.
How do you spell your last name? Do staff have this person's name? Just spell the last name so they can get it correct in the records, please.
K-O-C-K.
K-O-C-K. All right. So, and I think we have nobody else speaking in opposition. Could you state your address, please?
1649 St. Clair Avenue West.
Okay. Are you bringing the application as it is, or have you made any modifications or changes?
We did some modifications to follow the community planning recommendations.
So this is the staff report that you've complied with? You complied with all these changes?
Yes, correct.
So you've modified number 1 to go to 0.4 meters, number 2, 0.48, number 3, 18.05, all the numbers exactly as in the staff recommendation?
Yes, correct. We did all the recommendations. We follow everything, and we also removed one of the variances.
Which one did you remove?
Number 4, the building depth.
Okay, you removed that, and you modified 5 to 37.79, right? Okay.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so let me just turn to my panel members and see. I see heads shaking. Okay, well, it looks like it's your lucky day. You don't have to make a presentation. It's up to you. We're not going to take it away from you, but you will take away your lucky day if you make a presentation. It's your choice. They don't need to hear.
No, I think it's a pretty straightforward application, and we follow the recommendations. So I'm pretty confident with this one.
Okay, so let's go into committee. And in committee, I look to my panelists to see if somebody is brave enough to bring a motion to approve. That person is Mr. Marziari.
I'm happy to make a motion as the applicant work with the planning department and make this revision. So I'd like to make a motion to approve this application as amended. I'm not going to read the amendments, the revisions again, and I don't see any urban forestry condition actually. 21, there is no condition.
There is a condition?
There is a condition, number 21. Oh, sorry, yes, subject to urban forestry condition.
Okay. So we've got a motion. It's subject to the amendment to comply with the staff report as identified in the first paragraph of the staff report's recommendations, and the forestry requirement as well. We have a seconder, and that is Mr. Bartolo, and a vote on this shows all in favor with a unanimous approval. Before we move on to item number 22, let's go back to see if our neighbor on item 20 is available.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I spoke to the neighbor, and she does not wish to speak. She's just listening today.
Oh, okay. So the neighbor
We can bring back Ken Davis.
So we go back to, let's go back to item 20. We've heard from the applicant. We had no questions from the applicant. There's no standing for the applicant to appear again because there is no neighbor to rebut. So So let's go into committee on item number 20 and see if there is any discussion or motion. And I see Mr. Bartolo motioning to say something.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, it's a pretty straightforward application. I think it meets the 4 tests. I don't see any adverse community impact. Therefore, I'll put forward to a motion to approve this application with no conditions.
I see Mr. Bartolo has brought the motion, and Mr. Kubo here is looking like he is seconding it. So we now have a motion and a seconder, and all those in favor includes a unanimous in favor. So we have the approval for item 20. Congratulations to the owner. Now let us move to item 22. Item 22 is 156 Shelbourne Avenue has 7 variances to construct a new 2-story detached dwelling. This includes an arborist report, a letter of support, and a staff report. Of these 7 variances, these deal with east yard setback, west yard setback, length, depth, front yard setback, and so forth. The staff report has asked for conditions to be imposed as agreed upon by the applicant, and those are that variances number 1, 2, 3, and 4 be developed in accordance with the site plan drawing submitted to the committee, and they also recommend that it be developed in accordance with the site plan drawings. So we've got an applicant's agent on the line, do we? Yes.
Yes.
Welcome, applicant's agent. Please state your name and address.
Yeah, it's Sarah Ifra, 313 Hillhurst Boulevard, Toronto, M6B 1M9.
So before you get going, just wanted to check if there were any changes to your application since it was made. I guess that's my first question. Are there changes?
No, there are no changes.
Now, how about those conditions? The staff report has asked for conditions as agreed by the applicant. Have you agreed to those? Are those variances going to be developed as the staff have recommended?
Absolutely, yes.
So you're okay with the staff recommendation and conditions being imposed here, and you've agreed to them, right?
Yes, yes.
So before you get going on your presentation, let me just canvass our room of esteemed panel members and watch their heads shake to say they really don't need to hear from you, and it is your lucky day. But if you choose not to accept that, you are welcome to have your 5 minutes.
Right, no, it's okay. I don't have to make a presentation as long as everybody's clear with what's there.
Well, they've all shaken their heads. Much as I'm sure they would like to hear you, they just don't think it's really great use of our time. So I will turn to them, and I see Mr. Cooper waving his hand for
Yes,
what I think is a
Chair.
motion.
Yeah, I'm happy to make a motion to approve the application, especially as the applicant has advised the panel that they've made the changes, including those recommended by transportation services. So, and then as I also believe that this application meets the 4 tests.
Okay, so the transportation report as well. So you're going to impose those conditions that they've already agreed to, but as identified in the staff report. Is there a transportation report condition there, or what? No condition. Okay, so we got the motion to approve subject to the conditions in the staff report, and I need a seconder to, and Mr. Marzieri is doing that. So we now have a motion seconded. All those in favor? There is a before we go, the transportation.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I agree with everything my colleague said. I just propose a friendly amendment
Okay.
to add the condition noted in the conclusion section of the transportation report that the driveway within the public right-of-way be a maximum of 6 meters wide.
Okay, so we've got a friendly amendment for the driveway. I see everybody nodding that that's friendly. All those in favor of this, it's approved. Congratulations to the applicant and the applicant's agent. And now let us move to item number 23.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 23 is at 86 Park Home Avenue, and that is for 2 variances to construct a new dwelling. We have an arborist report, and it looks like we don't have other reports, but we've got a few documents. But really, we're talking about lot coverage and vehicle access, and there's nobody opposed to it, but there is an applicant agent on the line somewhere, right? Okay, so let's put that person on.
Yeah.
Are you there?
Yes, Mahir Manius,
Okay, thank you. And your address?
number 1 Teakwood Grove, Toronto, M3B 2H9.
Thank you. Now, are you making any changes to this application, or is it as it was submitted?
No proposed changes.
All right, so before you get going on your presentation, I will look at my colleagues to see whether they will nod their heads. Mr. Kubu, are you nodding your head sideways? Nobody has any issues that they really need for you to talk about, Mr. Agent. You are free to have your 5 minutes, but this could be your lucky day if you don't do that. So you have to decide if you want to proceed or let us go into committee.
No, I'll take it, Mr. Chair. Save the 5 minutes, so I'll leave it in your hands.
All right, so we're going to go into committee, and I look to Mr. Marziari's motion to approve. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Motion to
Yes,
approve.
for you,
Mr. Marziari.
I think it's a fairly straightforward application, just 2 variances, and the vehicle access, there's no objection from transportation, so I'd like to make a motion to approve with no condition.
And Mr. Bartolo is seconding that. All those in favor? It looks like we have a unanimous decision, and we have approved. Congratulations to the applicant and the applicant's agent, and that concludes our hearings for the day. Thank you to our staff, to our members of the public, and our
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, that concludes, and we are adjourned. Thank you. It is 5:14. Thank you. We're done.